Emma Harper took the job everyone else ran from, a place ruled by the cold and ruthless Cale Weston, whose harsh ways had crushed every soul before her. His piercing stare and unforgiving nature made him the most feared man in Blackstone. But Emma refused to break, and her quiet strength became the one thing that could melt his iron heart. Just wait until you see how this shocking turn of events brought justice in the most unexpected way. The sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty plains of Blackstone as Emma Harper tightened her grip on the worn leather strap of her bag. The bus that had carried her for 7 hours disappeared in a swirl of dirt, leaving her standing alone on the side of a long, gravel road. Ahead loomed the gates of Weston Ranch, their ironwork stark against the horizon like the bars of a prison. Emma's heart pounded. She had read the warnings online, heard the whispered stories in town. "You're crazy to go there," Miss Callahan at the diner had told her. "That man eats people alive." But Emma didn't have the luxury of choice. Her younger brother's medical bills were piling up, and this job, the one nobody else in Blackstone dared to take, was her only chance. As she pushed the gate open and stepped inside, the world seemed to grow quieter. Even the wind stilled, as if the land itself was holding its breath. The main house rose in the distance, an imposing structure of wood and stone that looked more like a fortress than a home. In front of it stood a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a cowboy hat tilted low over piercing gray eyes. He watched her approach like a hawk, sizing up prey. "Miss Harper?" His voice was deep, smooth, but edged with something sharp. "Yes, sir. Emma Harper," she replied, forcing her voice not to tremble. He didn't offer his hand. Instead, his gaze swept over her from head to toe, taking in her modest blouse, worn jeans, and scuffed boots. A ghost of a smirk touched his lips. "You don't look like you'll last a week." Emma stiffened, heat rising to her cheeks. "I'm not here to quit, Mr. Weston. I'm here to work." "Work?" His laugh was low and humorless. "You don't know the meaning of the word. Out here, work breaks people. It makes them wish they never set foot on my land." She met his eyes, surprised by the flash of pain that flickered there before it was replaced by ice. This wasn't just cruelty. This was a man guarding something, or someone. "Then I'll just have to prove you wrong," she said quietly. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy and tense. Then, with a curt nod, he turned and started walking toward the house. "Be up at dawn. You'll find out soon enough whether you're as tough as you think." As Emma followed, her boots kicking up clouds of dry dirt, she couldn't shake the feeling she was walking into a lion's den. The ranch was vast and beautiful, but beneath its golden pastures and rolling hills, there was an undercurrent of danger, like a wound that had never healed. She had taken the job nobody wanted, and now, as the heavy doors of Weston Ranch closed behind her, she began to wonder if she was strong enough to survive it. The days at Weston Ranch blurred together in a whirl of sweat, dust, and sharp words. Emma woke each morning before the sun, her hands blistered from endless chores, hauling water, mending fences, feeding restless horses. And through it all, she felt his eyes on her. Cale Weston didn't shout. He didn't need to. One cold glance was enough to freeze the blood in her veins. He had a way of standing perfectly still, arms crossed, as though weighing her worth. Each task became a silent test she couldn't afford to fail, but there were cracks in his armor. Tiny, fleeting moments that didn't fit the image of a ruthless ranch owner. One evening, Emma found herself in the main house, tasked with dusting the high shelves of his office. The room smelled faintly of cedar and leather, the walls lined with books and trophies from years past. On the massive oak desk sat a single framed photo. A young woman with chestnut hair smiled back, her eyes warm and alive. The inscription at the bottom read, "Molly. Always." Emma reached for the frame, curiosity tugging at her. "You don't belong here." The voice cut through the stillness like a whip. She spun around to see Cale leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, hat pulled low. His gray eyes were unreadable. I'm sorry," Emma stammered. You were just about to stick your nose where it doesn't belong." He stepped into the room, boots heavy against the floorboards. "Rule number 1 on this ranch, don't ask questions you don't want answers to." But even as he spoke, Emma caught it, the flicker of something in his expression. Pain, regret. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by his usual icy mask. Go. Now. She obeyed, her heart pounding in her chest. But that night, lying awake in the small guest room, she couldn't shake the image of the smiling woman or the raw edge in Cale's voice. There was more to him than cruelty. She could feel it. But every time she came close to peeling back a layer, he slammed the door shut again. The next morning, as Emma struggled to lift a sack of feed, she felt a shadow fall over her. Move aside. Cale took the bag effortlessly, tossing it onto the truck bed. I had it, she said, wiping sweat from her brow. No, you didn't. His tone was flat, but there was no malice in it this time. For a heartbeat, their eyes met. The guarded hostility she'd grown used to was still there, but beneath it lingered something else, something unspoken. Then, as quickly as it came, the moment passed. He turned away without another word, leaving Emma with more questions than answers. Spring crept over Weston Ranch, softening the harsh winter winds and coaxing wildflowers from the dusty earth. Yet inside the boundaries of the sprawling land, the tension between Emma and Cale remained as sharp as ever, though something was shifting. It started with small things. A mug of coffee left on the porch for her before sunrise. A blanket tossed over her shoulders one chilly evening as she repaired a broken fence. He never said much, but his actions began to speak in quiet, unfamiliar ways. Emma wasn't sure what to make of it. One moment, Cale was the same stern, untouchable man who seemed determined to keep her at arm's length. The next, he was saving her from a spooked horse that nearly trampled her in the corral. You need to watch your footing, he said after pulling her out of harm's way. His hand lingered on her arm a second too long. I had it under control, Emma shot back, though her voice trembled slightly. His lips curved in the faintest hint of a smile, something she had never seen before. Sure you did. That night, as they sat by a crackling fire outside the barn, Emma caught herself studying him, the way the flames softened the hard lines of his face, the shadows beneath his eyes, as if he hadn't slept well in years. Why do you do it? She asked suddenly. Do what? Push everyone away. Cale didn't answer right away. He poked at the fire with a stick, eyes distant. Because it's easier to be alone than to lose someone again. The words hung heavy between them, carried away by the night wind. Emma didn't press further, but in that moment, she saw him. Not the cold, cruel cowboy the town whispered about, but a man haunted by the past. Over the next weeks, their fragile truce deepened. They worked side by side in the fields, mended fences together, and shared quiet meals when the other workers had gone. Emma noticed the way Cale's guard would slip at times, how his voice softened when he spoke to the horses, how his eyes lingered on her just a moment too long. One evening, a storm rolled across the plains, trapping them both in the stable as rain lashed against the roof. Lightning flashed, illuminating the space between them. You've changed since I got here, Emma said softly, her fingers brushing the mane of a nervous horse. Or maybe you're just seeing the man I used to be, Cale replied. His voice was low, almost vulnerable. Emma looked at him, her heart pounding. She wanted to speak, to tell him that she wasn't afraid of his darkness, but before she could, he turned away. Don't, he said roughly. Don't try to fix me, Harper. Some things can't be fixed. But Emma wasn't so sure. The storm had not relented for 2 days. Sheets of rain turned the dusty roads into rivers of mud, and gale-force winds rattled the windows of the Weston Ranch like restless spirits. The workers had taken refuge in their quarters, and the house felt like a cavern of echoes and shadows. But Emma couldn't stay inside, not when she knew the horses hated storms more than people did. She wrapped herself in a thin jacket and braved the downpour to check on them, boots sinking into the soggy ground with every step. The stable smelled of wet hay and leather, warm and earthy compared to the chill outside. She didn't expect to find Cale there, standing so still he might have been a statue. His shirt clung to his shoulders from the damp air, and his hat lay forgotten on a nearby post. You should be inside, he said without turning his head. His voice was quieter than usual, not cold, not sharp, but almost tired. So should you, Emma replied. She brushed damp strands of hair from her face and stepped farther into the stable. Lightning flashed through the cracks in the wooden walls, briefly lighting the space in pale white. Emma saw the tension in his posture, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. "Cale," she said gently, "why do you keep punishing yourself?" His head turned slightly, just enough for her to catch the profile of his face. His jaw tightened, and there was a long pause before he answered. "You don't know what you're asking." "Then tell me," she pressed, her voice steady. "Help me understand." Something in him seemed to falter. He exhaled slowly, as if the weight of her question had knocked the breath from his lungs. "I couldn't save her," he said finally, the words low and rough. "Molly. She was my little sister. She trusted me to get her out of this place, away from our parents and their expectations. I swore I'd take care of her. And I failed." Emma's chest tightened. She remembered the photograph in his office, the warm smile of a girl frozen in time. "What happened?" she asked softly. Cale's shoulders rose and fell in a shallow, shaky breath. "She ran before I could get her out. I searched for months, spent everything I had to find her, but by the time I did..." His voice broke and he turned away. It didn't matter anymore. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the drumming of rain on the roof. Emma's heart ached for him, for the man who had buried his grief beneath layers of steel and silence. She stepped closer, the scent of damp earth and cedar surrounding them. "You can't carry it alone forever," she said, her tone gentle but unyielding. "Molly wouldn't want you to." Cale's gray eyes lifted to hers. They weren't cold now. They were raw, filled with pain and a flicker of something else, something that looked like longing. "Why do you even care, Harper?" he whispered. "You should have run from here the moment you saw what I was." "Because I see what's still there," she answered without hesitation, "and I don't scare easy." For a moment, Emma thought he might push her away as he always did. Instead, Cale let out a long, ragged breath and leaned back against the stall door, his posture slumping as if the fight had drained out of him. "You're too stubborn for your own good," he murmured, almost to himself. "Maybe, but someone has to be." The storm outside began to ease, the thunder rolling farther into the hills. But inside the stable, the air still crackled, not with hostility, but with a fragile, growing warmth neither of them knew how to name. The air on Weston Ranch was different that morning, softer somehow, carrying the scent of blooming wildflowers and warm earth. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean. Emma stepped out of the guest house, the early sun brushing her face with gold. She could hear the low murmur of cattle in the distance and the rhythmic creak of a windmill turning lazily. For the first time since arriving, she felt a strange sense of belonging. She found Cale by the old corral, repairing a broken fence. His sleeves were rolled up, his tanned arms moving with quiet precision as he hammered a nail into place. He didn't notice her at first, or maybe he did and chose not to show it. "You missed breakfast?" Emma said softly. He glanced up, his eyes catching hers. There was no trace of the guarded hostility she had once seen in them. Instead, there was a warmth she hadn't dared hope for. "Wasn't hungry," he replied, but there was the faintest curve at the corner of his mouth. Emma approached, her boots crunching softly against the gravel. "You've been different lately," she said. "Kinder, lighter." Cale leaned against the fence, wiping sweat from his brow. For a long moment, he stared out at the fields, watching the horses grazing in the morning light. "I spent years thinking I had to be made of stone," he said quietly. "That if I let anyone close, I'd lose them too." His voice faltered slightly. "But you didn't let me push you away." Emma's heart tightened. She wanted to speak, but he turned to her first, his expression open in a way she had never seen before. "You reminded me what it feels like to be human again," he said, "and I don't ever want to forget." He stepped closer, so close she could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. "Stay, Emma, not because of the job, not because you feel sorry for me. Stay because you want to." She searched his face for any sign of doubt, but there was none. The man who had once seemed unreachable now stood before her, unguarded and waiting. Emma felt a slow smile spread across her face. "I was never planning to leave," she whispered. A soft breeze stirred the air as he reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining with a gentleness that spoke louder than any words. The ranch felt alive around them, horses whinnying, grass swaying, the world breathing again. Cale Weston, the man no one thought capable of change, had found his way back to the light. And Emma Harper, the woman who took the job nobody wanted, had become the reason why. Together, they turned to face the fields, the horizon stretching wide and full of possibility. For the first time in years, the future didn't seem so heavy. It seemed like home.